Scratchy, let me ask you something before I have to move on. There've been talk, Scratchy, over the last couple of months that the PNP keeps dropping the ball, missing opportunities. There's a broad consensus that in the budget debate they missed an opportunity. Don't you think, without providing them any advice, that this was a missed opportunity?
Yeah, I am a Jamaican neighbor, a proud Jamaican, and I managed to share the same vision neighbor of the Jamaica Labour Party. And what I'm going to say neighbor in terms of the PNP missing opportunity neighbor, we have seen this PNP organization neighbor, this PNP party led by Mark Jefferson Goldie neighbor, miss opportunities more than once neighbor. They have dropped so many catch neighbor that I myself neighbor, sometimes I wonder, how are these guys even still relevant? Or where these guys get their political sense from? Where does this leader, I mean, when you look at even Mark Goldie neighbor, and his ascendancy to the leadership of the PNP neighbor. Mark Golding ascendancy to the leadership of the PNP neighbor. It wasn't based on anything great that was done by Mark Golding. It wasn't done neighbor as a result neighbor of Mark Golding being this good leader, this great leader. It wasn't done as a base of Mark Golding. Mark Golding ascended to the leadership neighbor of the People's National Party neighbor because of his purse or his wallet, you know? So when you see an organization neighbor get a leader like that neighbor, this leader didn't from a great merit. This leader came to a neighbor. This leader is a flat leader neighbor. This is someone neighbor. When you look at even Mark Golding private life neighbor and even business neighbor, he's touted as being successful neighbor. Business neighbor that Mark Jefferson Golding neighbor has succeeded based on him being the leader of that business neighbor. It has always been person, 2 person, or 3 person being a part of that group, and he collectively benefit from that neighbor. He has never been the upfront person who's the one making most of the moves and stuff like that neighbor. So Mark Golding neighbor is definitely neighbor. His leadership style, his leadership quality neighbor is lacking. And when I say a leader like Mark Golding neighbor missing so much opportunity neighbor, I sometimes wonder neighbor if this guy neighbor sit back at night when he goes home neighbor, if he take a look at what is going on the political platform, if he really have an understanding neighbor of how the politics in Jamaica operate and how the politics in Jamaica work. I don't know either if he realize neighbor that we're in the year of 2026 and he should get rid of the 1970s playbook. Because no more relevance neighbor in today's politics neighbor. Jamaica has reached a stage neighbor where even though you're an opposition neighbor, it doesn't mean that you have to oppose everything. You can still come out neighbor and say something neighbor and stand in agreement with the governing party neighbor, and you won't lose any clout, you won't lose any membership neighbor. You might let the well-thinking Jamaicans or other persons who support the Jamaica Labour Party or don't support the Jamaica Labour Party look at you and your organization different. So when Mark Golding neighbor had an opportunity like this presented to him, coming from a party neighbor, leading a party neighbor that was riddled with corruption, with acts of corruption neighbor, the perception of corruption neighbor is very heavy towards the People's National Party. And Nepotism. I think neighbor, the nepotism, cronyism. So I think neighbor that the perfect opportunity arise or showed up neighbor from Mark Jefferson Golding to come to us as well-thinking Jamaicans and say to us Jamaicans, I understand what is going on.
But by the way, Scratchy, here is a man who raised the matter of ethics and morality and values in his budget presentation.
In his budget presentation.
Conduct, and is putting forward himself as a man of integrity.
Exactly.
And you miss an opportunity like this?
Miss an opportunity like this to come to Jamaica and say to Jamaicans, yes, I understand and see what is going on. We read the report, and anyone, remember I know, anyone who bypass any taxes in Jamaica, yes, we don't want that because we are a country, we know important taxes are to our development and our advancement. So yes, I'm going to ask that Mr. Garden be step aside. I'm going to ask Mr. Garden, I will remove Mr. Garden and we will cooperate fully with any investigation that is going on. I would ask Mr. Gordon to cooperate fully with any investigation that is going on. And let Jamaicans try to see a different light from the PNP. Let Jamaicans try to see a different type of leadership from Mark Golding. But Mark Golding, once again, neighbor, failed, neighbor, to let Jamaica saw him, neighbor, as an alternative leader and as someone who can bring us forward, neighbor, and bring us to the light of where we want to go, neighbor. Mark Jefferson Golding, neighbor, is an abject failure, neighbor. And he's not just a failure to the People's National Party. He's probably one of the worst PNP leaders that we have ever seen in the history of PNP, neighbor. No leadership style, no leadership qualities, neighbor. He come barefacedly, neighbor, and defend the PNP and defend mishaps and corruption and acts of corruption. When you look at the statement that was released yesterday, I am wondering who wrote that statement, who gave Mark Jefferson Golding advice to come and release that statement, neighbor, because the statement was so shocking to me that you're going to try to cover act of corruption by saying that dialysis treatment was being offered at a cheaper rate.
Can you imagine?
That is total madness, neighbor. And neighbor, as I said, Jamaicans, we need to continue to call out Mark Golding and the PNP, neighbor. We need to continue to call them out day in and day out, neighbor. We need to call out these guys for who they are. We need to push. We need to fight, neighbor, because the advancement of Jamaica, neighbor, is not just up to the cabinet of Jamaica alone, you know.
But to the people.
But to the people, neighbor. The people of Jamaica plays a greater role in the advancement of Jamaica, neighbor.
Yes, sir.
And if we continue to allow the governing party alone to come out and speak out against Mark Golding, it is not going to go nowhere, neighbor. Because it is going to say you're a Labourite, and it's just because you're a Labourite, you're against Mark Golding and Dennis Gordon, Jacqueline and the PNP saga. Well-thinking Jamaicans need to come out and speak, and I don't know why well-thinking Jamaicans are so silent. What are they? Why are they so silent? Do they benefit from these things? Neighbor, I am concerned as a Jamaican citizen. I am concerned for my country because I have the opportunity, neighbor, to live in the next country, and I watch the political system of this country that I am living in, neighbor, and I see how easy it is, neighbor, for a politician to resign. I see how easy it is, neighbor, for a politician to lose friends with persons who are close allies to them because of any mishaps that they have done, neighbor. I have seen where persons are not afraid to come out and call it out to what it is, neighbor. Yes. And that is not the case in Jamaica, and that is very concerning to me.
Yes.
That the well-thinking Jamaica.
I said, hold on, Scratchy. I said earlier that if this was 10, 15 years ago, Scratchy, it would have been dead in the waters. But thank God for social media, the expansion of views in spaces like this. People are able to turn on their cameras. I see Miss Chin online there. She's put out a piece on it. I see Protecting over there. He's joining the conversation. Scratchy, Mr. Golding may not be understanding the changing landscape that he's operating in. Sensible people, they are Jamaica, you know, Scratchy, with people can read with sense and dissect information and see nonsense from sense, you know, and call it out, you know.
Neighbor, if sensible people never there Jamaica, I can tell you, neighbor, that right now, neighbor, Jamaicans are way more sensible, neighbor. Jamaicans are way more understanding, neighbor. And Jamaicans are living in the reality of what is going on now. And Jamaicans are, Mark Jefferson Golding, it's so sad, neighbor, that he's leading a political organization. And this guy is far from the reality. This guy continues to talk about the 400,000 persons who support him and believe that the 400,000 who support him, neighbor, is a majority of the Jamaica population. We're about 2.8 to 3 million strong. And you continue to talk about 400,000 persons. 400,000 persons are at the lesser end of the population. And you continue to think that you can come out and continue to please this 400,000. You're not going to ever be the government of Jamaica, because what you're doing is you're continuing to please in the lesser portion of the population. And once you continue to please the lesser portion of the population, you're telling us indirectly that you're willing to be opposition for a very, very long time, because it's majority rule for you to be the government. And if you continue to try to appease the persons who are at the lesser end of the population or the lesser amount of the population, you're gonna be in opposition for a very, very long time, neighbor. Mark Goldie, neighbor, don't realize, neighbor, that Jamaicans have reached a level, neighbor, where we are independent thinkers. Mark Goldie don't realize, neighbor, that Jamaicans have reached a level now, neighbor, where Jamaicans want to see the best interest for their kids. Jamaicans are not that selfish no more. Jamaicans are not all about us. We are living for our children and our grandchildren. We are not living for ourselves anymore. Neighbor, I tell you guys all the while, Andrew Michael Holness has single-handedly, neighbor, changed the governance structure of Jamaica, neighbor, and he has also single-handedly changed the political structure of Jamaica, neighbor. The politics that we are used to, neighbor, Andrew Holness has changed that, where anytime acts of corruption come up against any member of your party, where you back them and you try to wall out and don't make nothing happen to them, Andrew Holness changed that, neighbor. Anytime any act of corruption or any mishaps come up against any member of the Jamaica Labour Party, neighbor, actions is taken, neighbor. Action is taken. From the moment Andrew Holness take that approach, neighbor, he's going to always show up the PNP because they cannot match that style. And once they cannot match that style, neighbor, they're going to show Jamaicans that you are not serving the best interests of Jamaica. You're serving the best interests of your political organization. Neighbor, more than once, we have seen the Jamaica Labour Party led by Andrew Holness, neighbor, acted whenever there's anything. We started with Floyd Green as a minister, neighbor. He was out. He breached COVID rules. He was removed. We had a candidate, neighbor, in the 2020 election. And I can tell you this. He breached COVID rules, neighbor, and I can tell you this, that if the Jamaica Labour Party did not remove that guy, neighbor, from down there in center, neighbor, Lisa Anna would have lost her seat from that 2020 election, neighbor. Mm-hmm. And the Jamaica Labour Party removed him because he breached COVID rules, neighbor. And we have seen it again. Dr. Andrew Wheatley was removed, neighbor, as a result of allegation of mishaps. Look at Royal Reid right now before the court because of allegation of mishaps, neighbor. The Jamaica Labour Party has always acted, neighbor, and shown that they have the best interests of Jamaica at heart, neighbor. When it comes to Andrew Michael Holness, neighbor, Andrew Michael Holness don't business about any political strength that you can bring to the JLP. He don't business about any political, any finances that you can bring to the JLP. Once you are caught or you are found to be in a foul or whatever mishaps, neighbor, actions will be taken against you. And
because the party, which is the institution, is bigger than any individual. Eh?
Neighbor, the Jamaica Labour Party is bigger than any individual, neighbor. No one is not irreplaceable when it comes to the Jamaica Labour Party. Once you are found to be in any mishaps or any corrupt act, you will be asked to step aside. You will be asked to remove, regardless of your financial strength, regardless of your political strength, you will be asked to step aside. No, go over to the PNP, the People's National Party. That is not the case over there, neighbor. The People's National Party, neighbor, has always ruled Jamaica, neighbor, with the best interest of the PNP at heart at all times. Never the best interest of Jamaica, neighbor. And that is why when the 1990s when the PNP was in power, this is why we suffered so much, because the country at itself wasn't benefiting from anything, neighbor. It was just a few persons who branded themselves as comrades, branded themselves as strongmen to the PNP, branded themselves as die-hearted PNP. Those are the ones who benefited, neighbor. And Andrew Michael Holness has changed that. And with that change, neighbor, it is difficult for the PNP to adapt. It is difficult for the PNP. That is why the PNP lost 3 consecutive elections. This is a political organization, neighbor, where they weren't a one-term government. They became a one-term government the first time as a result of Andrew Holness. They have never lost 3 consecutive elections before. They now lost 3 consecutive elections. Why? Because Andrew Holness is not doing the tit-for-tat politics, neighbor, that Edward Siaga.
And to be very frank, Scratchy, the Jamaica Labour Party would have to perform very poorly to not be very competitive for the 4th term.
Neighbor, for the Jamaica Labour Party not be competitive for the 4th term, neighbor, they would have to shoot themselves in the foot. They would have to commit political suicide.
Yeah. And we're not ready to call it yet, so we are cautiously saying they're going to be
cautiously saying, neighbor, that the Jamaica Labour Party is in the right stance, neighbor, to lead Jamaica for a 4th term, neighbor. Based on what we are seeing with this opposition, neighbor, I don't see this opposition ever gaining power right now, neighbor. Where Jamaica is right now, the Jamaicans electorate will not elect Mark Jefferson Goldie, neighbor, and his baseless bench, neighbor, and his empty barrels, neighbor, and these guys, neighbor, who don't know nothing about governance. You cannot run a country, neighbor, based on the rules and the regulation that govern your political organization. Political organization and government must be separated. You must know how to separate them. When it's time for politics, it is time for politics. And when it is time for good governance, it is time for good governance. And you have a lot of Jamaica Labour Party supporters, neighbor, who like to come out and say the Jamaica Labour Party is losing from a politics is losing from the politics. Neighbor, listen to me. And listen to me good, and I want everybody to understand this. Neighbor, Jamaica has moved away from politics, neighbor. I don't want to support no government neighbor who knows anything about politicking. It's not about neighbor. Politicking is the reason why Jamaica is in the situation that we are in. Politicking is the reason why we had high unemployment. Politicking was the reason why we had high poverty. Politicking was the reason why we had high murder rates, neighbor. So the Jamaica Labour Party is stepping away from that. And all of us who support the Jamaica Labour Party, we must stand in line with that, neighbor, and understand that politicking and politics alone cannot bring us to the promised land. We cannot reach the light of the tunnel, neighbor, with politicking.
And I think to be fair, Scratchy, we have to separate politicking from governance. The cabinet of Jamaica must concentrate on governing the country for everybody. The Jamaica Labour Party can do its politicking, but the government of Jamaica, led by the Prime Minister and the cabinet, are to do governance, Scratchy. Govern Jamaica for everyone. Provide opportunities for everyone, sir. Balance the scale, eh?
Balance the scale, neighbor. Jamaica cannot advance if you want to go around and fix up JLP communities. Jamaica cannot advance if you go around and only labor right get work. That was the order of the day and the PNP, neighbor. PNP alone could get jobs. PNP alone could go into certain sector. The social welfare of the country and the social programs, PNP alone could benefit of it from the 90s. That is why Jamaica was in the situation that it was in. And politicking, neighbor, the Jamaica Labour Party do that. But from a governance standpoint, neighbor, we need good governance, neighbor. That is what Jamaica has been short of. That is what Jamaica has been lacking.
I think that is a fundamental point, Scratchy, that we're not saying that the party is not to do politics, because that is important. That's how you win government.
That's how you win, yeah.